if you're a person with disabilities and you have been denied access to a job, to a building, or any sort of service within Zimbabwe, did you know that it might be against the law? And that's why we're quite excited to have director coming from the Ministry of Public Service and Social Services, Dr. Shouromo, standing next with me. This director, it's so good to be standing next with you right here at the Disability Expo. Now, in your experience, there are many violations people commit against people with disabilities, sometimes unknowingly. In your experience, what are some of the common violations you see knocking on your door?
Thank you for like it. Like you said, lack of awareness is resulting in persons with disabilities not getting their full rights from the community, from their families, from the workplace, from the church, wherever you go. So the majority of issues that are affecting persons with disabilities is, first of all, a child is denied going outside the household because the parents, the family doesn't want anyone to know that there's a child with a disability. So that's one of the most grievous abuses out there. Then once the child is out, they are not getting rights to education because the school is not inclusive enough. The terrain, the classrooms are not accessible as there are no ramps, there are no maybe teachers that have been trained to work with their child. As they grow older, they want to get employed. They are denied access to employment because they have a disability, because of the extra costs or the costs that come with disability. Which costs am I talking about? When a person who uses a wheelchair comes in, just coming into town, for instance, they are paying for their bus fare, they are paying for their wheelchair, they are paying for their assistant. So sometimes an employer is not willing to take that cost to make sure that, which is what we call reasonable accommodations, making sure that you provide the right environment, the right support, the right assistive technologies, so that a person with a disability is at equal par with everyone else. So that is also being denied. Or the general assumption that because someone has a disability, they are not able to do as good as someone without a disability. That is happening in Zimbabwe. But I'm also happy to say, because of the new Persons with Disabilities Act, which was enacted by His Excellency the President in November 2025, we now have a broader definition of disability. So what it means is, where before we were only considering physical disabilities that we see because someone is using a crutch or is using a wheelchair, we are now also considering that there are other disabilities that are actually invisible. What are we talking about? Your epilepsy, your autism, your psychosocial disabilities that we really need then to provide assistive technologies for, and also capacitate caregivers and the families on how to work with those people so that they do get their rights. You'll be surprised how well persons with disabilities do once you provide them with the right environment, the correct assistive technologies. We make the environment suitable for them. Because what is making a person with an impairment have a disability is because the environment we are providing does not work for them. They do not have the wheelchair, they do not have the ramp, they do not have the sign language. So we have already made the environment, or it's my way of thinking, my own thoughts about a person that are actually discriminating about them. So as long as we don't change all those things, we'll continue to help people with disabilities. But once we get rid of that, we provide the equal environment, we provide the additional services required, the additional costs required, you find that persons with disabilities will flourish.
So you highlighted two important aspects that are at the center of the National Development Strategy 2 towards Vision 2030, and that is access to education and also a productive sector in our economy as a country. My first question would be, let's talk about the school setup and the education sector. What are the rights that are expected to be fulfilled by a school to make sure that a learner is able to enjoy the right of access to school, to education? And in the event that they fail to comply, what happens? And I also ask the same question even as an employer. in terms of hiring a person with disability, what is our Zimbabwean law expecting them or mandating them to do, and if they fail to comply, what happens?
Yes. So yes, I'll start with the school. The school should be accessible from ECD to university level, making sure that both the environment, that is the physical environment, and the information is accessible. We have a child with albinism who has low vision, and they can't use the normal print, so they need larger print. So we need books that print to make them be able to read with the other students. Those that need Braille, it's also provided. That those that prefer information in soft copy, so that they can use a reader to actually read to them what is on the book, if that. So schools have been capacitated. We actually have what we call the National Technical Committee on Disability Inclusion. This is multi-sectoral. It means Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, colleges are actually part of that. So we plan together with the persons with disabilities. They tell us from their lived experiences what works, what doesn't work. Then the technocrats then try to improve the environment to make sure that it then works for persons with disabilities. So schools should be accessible, should be providing the assistive technologies that are needed by students, and also the resources that may go beyond the usual resources that we buy as schools, to make sure that students with the different disabilities are actually being catered for. I'll take a child with autism, for instance. They may not be able to learn in the class of 50 that we have. They also need an environment, a quiet place when they are actually activated because of something that is in the environment. So all that should actually be coming in not a once-off, but gradually we should be seeing those changes already happening. So when schools are planning, already when they are setting up what the plan of their buildings, they should already have disability in mind. The design of their toilets, how accessible, especially for the rural areas. Our pit latrines are not accessible for persons with disabilities, especially those with physical disabilities. So we should already be thinking of making sure that our ablution blocks, the universal design is actually being used. But as the child has gone through school, they're a young adult now seeking employment. We have always thought that because they have disabilities, all they can do are the vocational training. But we have a lot of students actually going through university. They can qualify, they are lawyers. We have judges that are now persons with disabilities. We have managers, we have chief directors who have disabilities. So that is evidence that once the environment, once the attitudes change, persons with disabilities can do well. So what do we expect in the workplace? We're expecting that we provide, for a person maybe with short stature, are we providing furniture that is to their size? So that we are not prejudicing them because they have to go on a chair that is very much higher than they can in their height. Are we making sure that our lifts, for instance, in our buildings, they actually have a voice over, so that if a person with a visual impairment gets into the lift, they can navigate on their own. They know they've pressed the button, they want to go to third floor, it talks back to the third floor, opening, closing. They can be independent, because that is where we want to go, where persons with disabilities are capacitated to have independent lives. They don't always need to have someone escorting them. Have we removed any harmful features that may be in our environment? Do we have braille on the walls, sometimes just to guide the person with the disability so that they know where they are without necessarily having to ask anyone? The bathrooms, we have seen in some companies they are segregating persons with disability, say this is a toilet for persons with disability. No, that's not what we are saying. What we are saying is let's build in such a way that a person with a disability can use, a person without a disability can use. Let's just have that plan right from the start. Then in terms of salaries, let's make sure that we do not shortchange them on their salaries. If they need an assistant, let's also cost that. If you are planning for a workshop, your officer has an assistant. You're planning for one extra person, and it's automatic already in your budget. So it doesn't have to come as an additional cost, because we've already planned for it right from the beginning.
So
then we also provide the necessary assistive technologies, your JAWS for your laptops, and other assistive devices depending on the disability that the person has. Then we also have people with who are from the deaf community. One best way of making sure that we learn sign language is if we have a colleague who is deaf. Because from interacting with them every day, you learn sign language and you continue learning. The challenge with doing a 1 week workshop and then going back to my office is because I'm not practicing, I forget. So it then becomes irrelevant, that training. So also employing the different disabilities so that then we can, in interacting, we then also convert our spaces to be effective for persons with disabilities.
So with our population, over 1.5 billion people with disability in our country, what mechanisms do we have to make sure that schools and the employer does comply with exactly what you've described? Is there consequences for schools, for communities, for employers who do not make sure that their place is as accessible to a person with any disability as for someone who does not seem to have any disability?
Yes, the new act talks about adjustment orders. So an adjustment order is the necessary corrections that you do to your building to make sure that it's accessible both physically and in terms of information to persons with disabilities. So we are in the process right now of going to buildings, identifying what is wrong with the building, what is making that service not accessible to persons with disabilities. Then the National Disability Affairs Board is issuing adjustment orders, and these are legal. And you are told the timeline by when you are supposed to have fulfilled those, failure to which you can actually be sued and go to court. We also even have the act also allowing someone who has tried to talk to a building owner to say, can you change this, and they are not changing. They can go straight to the High Court and report them. And once it's at the High Court and it's at the highest level, it means the penalties are even higher. So what I'm urging all public buildings, including our own government ministries, Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, the universities, the churches, the sports pavilions, whatever. Because remember, persons with disabilities have a right to every service, even the bars themselves, because people with disabilities also have that right to leisure. So let's make sure that our buildings are accessible, both in terms of physically and in terms of information.
So I'm just thinking,
yes.
I'm just wondering, how does a person with disabilities in rural areas, access legal support when they do feel that those rights that you've described have been violated?
Yes. So they can work through our district offices. We have 66 district offices across the 10 provinces. But where they may be far from the office, we also have a community cadre, which is called the community child care worker, who also doubles to do every other social protection work. So they can actually lodge their issue with the CCW. The CCW can inform the ministry. But as government, we also have, through the Ministry of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, we have the Legal Aid Directorate, which is the free lawyers for government. That persons with disabilities can also lodge their issues, and they have access to a free lawyer to be able to handle those issues.
We're speaking to the acting director Chorombo, coming from the Ministry of Labour, Public Service and Social Welfare, looking into how they are capacitating and bringing to life a lived reality conversation around living with disabilities for a person with disability.